First of all, let's arise and go from here. Now, those aren't my words. Those are words that were said by our Savior, by our Creator, by our Sustainer. He said that phrase, arise, let us go from here, to men who had dedicated their lives, given up their businesses and their homes, even neglected their families to follow him, live with him for 3.5 years. They actually said, we'll die with you. And after the Passover service, this little phrase is there, and he says, arise, let's go from here. Nothing he ever said wasn't of God. He said that. My words aren't mine, he said. So what does that phrase actually mean? Well, let's talk about that. Arise and go from here. Let us do that. This language is important to what we're talking about. We are left here to endure longer. Well, yeah, we're alive on earth in this age. We're still physical. We're left here to endure longer. Longer than we thought. And our trials of endurance while constantly, actively trusting God just seem to go on and on and on. Sometimes beyond our understanding, huh? Why am I alone? Why am I not well? Why am I having fears? Yet God does not leave us. Even while our God-gifted mind, our heart, our life, our purpose are not in the state we really feel we need to be. We want to be at peace and at safety. We want well-being. We want order. We want predictability, assurance of God's protection. We want guidance. We want loving relationship with God. We don't want unpredictable and unseen circumstances. We don't want bad health. We don't want living conditions that we don't understand. We don't want shallow relationships. We want to be all in order. But since our life is given to learn God life, to give it for God's plan, our God-gifted life, mind, heart, and purpose are being overseen. Well, it doesn't feel like it. Let's think about that a minute. It doesn't feel like it. We're being guided. We're being moved toward God's eternal kingdom and his righteousness. We're going from here. And by and for God and his family, he's doing this. It's our called and chosen of God duty to learn how to endure what we do not yet fully understand and to do it with God. We certainly do not want change. I've talked to people this week who the real concern, the real problem they're having is, I don't want to change. I don't want to change. Whatever it is that somebody is requiring of me, I don't want that. I want to stay the way it is. Well, that's not what it's like to walk out of Egypt into the desert, is it? We want to have predictability. We don't want unpredictability. We don't want to be upset. We want to move from here, or we don't want to be uninformed. We don't want to be underinformed. We want to be completely informed of what and why God's doing with us, and we don't want to be in a state of not peace. But God knows his plan. God knows what he's doing, and guess who's in charge? Is it me? Is it you? In charge of our lives? Well, we gave them to Christ. Remember, we said that. Those are phrases we say. Are they things we mean? Can we actually live those? We gave our lives to Christ. And it's all for us. All of this is happening for us and with him eternally. So now, let us understand this. Let us rise and go from here. Now, here's how we're going to look at this, okay? It's very, very simple. I can find it for you. In John 14, in verse 31. In John 14, verse 31, Christ simply says, "But that the world may know that I love the Father." So he's explaining to them where he's coming from. "But that the world may know that I love the Father." He's not talking about them teaching yet. "And as the Father gave me instructions, commandment, order, guidance, oversight, right? So do I. Arise. Let us go from here." What was here? What does that mean, that word here? It was the world. And they were going to give up everything for him, and he said, "Not enough. We're going to go from here. You're going to enter a thing in your life you couldn't possibly imagine. Things will happen to you that are not good. Things will happen to you that you don't understand. And the reality is, it's the plan of God." So, today we'll look at what many have looked through in commentaries, theology, and even the church has understood a little bit of this. But we understand more today. We first need to grasp something. We need to look at the setting around the cross of Christ in order to pick up our cross and follow him. And so let's begin the story in Matthew 27. Matthew 27, verse 45. Take your time. Let's go there to Matthew 27, 45, and understand that what we're looking at is what was happening on the cross today. We're going to look at that. And we will find that what happened on the cross wasn't just our Savior sacrificing himself for you and for all of us. He was teaching his church. He was teaching his people. He was teaching them how to do the same thing with the same approach and the same result. Okay, some would say, "I don't want to hear that. I don't want to be crucified, and God wouldn't do it." That's not the point. The point is, the trial you will go through, and I will go through, to understand what we are of God capable of doing, will be like this. So watch it. Let's watch this. Matthew 27, verse 45. Okay? "Now from the 6th hour until the 9th hour, there was darkness over all the land." And of course, hours were counted from sunrise, so the 6th hour was noon and the 9th hour was 3 o'clock, afternoon. So from noon until 3, there was this puzzling and mysterious darkness over the land, a darkness no doubt sent from God to grab people's attention, to signify the darkness that was taking place in the brutalization and the death of his son. The Jewish historian Josephus explicitly states that the lambs were slain at the temple beginning at the 9th hour, or 3 o'clock. Verse 46, Matthew 27, 46. "And about the 9th hour, Jesus cried out with a loud voice, 'Eli, Eli, lama sabachthani.' That is, and this is English translation of it, my God, why have you forsaken me?" Now Matthew records his words in Hebrew and Aramaic here. El, of course, was the El, God, one of the names and titles of God, and then that translates them into Greek, and then that's translated into English for us, my God, why have you forsaken me?" And we're going to look at that phrase. Have you ever wondered what it means? Why did he say that? Why would Jesus say that? Let's consider a few events and verses leading up to that, okay? Let's go back to Isaiah 53 first. Let's go back to Isaiah 53, okay? First of all, in Isaiah 53, did Jesus know what was going to happen to him? I mean, was he surprised? Why have you forsaken me, right? Was he surprised? First of all, let me just set your mind at ease. God didn't forsake him. That's not even scriptural. It's impossible. God doesn't do that. Okay, so something is amiss with the way that looks. Okay, first of all, did Jesus know what was going on and what was happening to him, what was going to happen to him? Well, he clearly did. So let's notice several verses. First, the messianic prophecy in Isaiah 53, verse 3 through 5. Isaiah 53, 3 through 5, by the way, written 800 years before this happened. Isaiah 53, 3. He is despised and rejected by men, a man of sorrows and acquainted with grief. And as we hid, as it were, our faces from him. He was despised, and we didn't esteem him. We humans didn't understand and grasp, as he said, what we're doing. Verse 4. Surely he has borne our griefs and carried our sorrows. Yet, right? So if we're afraid or we're sorrowful or we're down, Christ carries them. What's that? How? Okay, let's keep going. Yet we esteemed him stricken. We wanted that. We wanted him off the earth. We esteemed him stricken, smitten by God, afflicted, but he was wounded for our transgressions, not his. He was bruised for our iniquities. The chastisement for our peace was on him, and by his stripes, we are healed. Jesus knew the prophecy. It was written by him through Isaiah 800 years earlier. It foretold that he would be despised, he would be rejected, that he would bear our griefs, that he would be wounded and bruised and chastised and scourged. Then he knew that he would have to bear all of that because of our transgressions and our sins and our corruption of God's creation, which was perfect. And by the way, we as human beings were allowed in, and we said, no, we want to run it ourselves. He was, and listen to this, our creator. John 1 says, he created everything. And then he came and became flesh among us. He is our sustainer. He upholds all things by the word of his power. Let me ask you, do you want to breathe the next breath of your life? Where is it coming from? Evolution? Is the government sending your breath? Are you in charge of your life, and are you making your own breath? You really need to think this through. God allows you the next breath of life. Not only that, he allows you your thoughts. He allows you your purpose. Or another way of putting it is how Paul explained it to those who never heard of God, the real one. In him, we live and move and have our being. And have our being is, we understand there's a purpose to our life. Most don't know what it is. But it's in him that comes. He's giving us life. He's not just giving us spiritual life, he's giving us life. He is our judge. He judges the quick and the dead. He will judge whether we are to be resurrected. That's another whole sermon, but that is what his assignment is. And lastly, we haven't talked about this much. Jesus Christ is our responsible superior. He's superior to us in every way. We're not like God. Our thoughts aren't like God. Our ways aren't like God. He is our creator, our sustainer, our judge, our life giver. He is above us beyond anything we can imagine. He's above what everything is above us. And he is our responsible superior. Every knee will bow to him. And we're looking at what he said to us, what he instructed us to understand on the cross. So let's go over to Mark 10 here. Mark 10 and verse 32. Mark 10, verse 32. By the way, this is the first section of 2 sections today about this. The second section we'll find out together, God willing, how to do this. This we're looking at is telling us what happened. Then we'll take a look at what it meant, right? But let's notice first some other verses from the Gospels in Mark 10 leading up to this time. Mark 10, verse 32. Mark 10:32. Let's look at it. Now, in Mark 10:32, now they were on the road going up to Jerusalem. And he took the 12 aside again and began to tell them the things that would happen to him, right? Behold, we're going up to Jerusalem. The Son of Man will be betrayed to the chief priests and to the scribes, and they will condemn him to death and deliver him to the Gentiles, and they will mock him and scourge him and spit on him and kill him, and the third day he will rise again. That's very specific. He knew what was going to happen to him. Jesus had previously told his 12 disciples that it would be in Jerusalem that he would be betrayed, that the chief priests and scribes would condemn him to death and beat him and kill him, and then hand him over, or before that, hand him over to the Romans to be killed, and that he would be mocked, that he would be scourged, that he would be spat upon and killed before he would be resurrected 3 days later. It's pretty specific. So if he's asking, why did you leave me, because he's surprised at all of this, why did you forsake me, Father? That doesn't make sense, does it? Okay. But now in Matthew 26, let's go there. Matthew 26, not long after this, he told them again what would happen. Matthew 26, verse 1, right at the very beginning of Matthew 26. Matthew 26, 1, now it came to pass, Matthew 26, when Jesus had finished all these sayings, and all those sayings being what the Olivet prophecy that preceded it, he said to his disciples, you know that after 2 days is the Passover, and the Son of Man will be delivered up to be crucified. So now he's talking about being crucified. So here, just 2 days before these events, he specifically tells the disciples that he will die by crucifixion. He also shows that he's the fulfillment of the symbolism of the Passover lambs, that he will die on the day of Passover. And yet through this, knowing exactly what would happen to him, knowing he would have escaped and what was coming at any time, he could have walked off. He chose to go through this voluntarily anyway. So exactly what is going on here when Jesus says, my God, why have you forsaken me? Well, the answer is actually somewhat surprising. I've referred to this in the past, and this is the part that is allowing us to read the Bible in a way we've never seen before. The New Testament is filled with references specifically to the Old. And I'm not talking about references that are clear, that anybody could see in English. I'm talking about references in Greek, in the New Testament, that reference verses, actual things said in the Old Testament. In other words, to be quite frank about it, Christ is, and so are others, quoting Christ. Well, Christ wrote the Old Testament. He is the Word. Oh, yeah. Okay. So he's quoting himself. And it's called, this is the technical term, R-E-M-E-Z, remez. It's a remez. There are all kinds of remez. One is where there is just a specific overt reaction to an Old Testament verse. Sometimes they're acted out. Sometimes they are a bit hidden. But this one is overt. He's quoting himself from 1,000 years earlier. Yes. My God, why have you forsaken me? Many of you may know where that is. We'll go there. But hold on. If we don't know, we'll miss a huge part of the story of what Christ is going through and meaning for us today. And the reality of this remez is it is a direct quote of Psalm 22. It is the Psalm of the Messiah, the 22nd Psalm. Specifically, it's a prophetic psalm of the Messiah that would go through his suffering and death on behalf of all mankind. Incidentally, it's the only place in the Gospels, in the New Testament, where Jesus addresses the Father as my God, much less repeating it and using it twice. That's further proof that he's quoting here directly from the 22nd Psalm. He always calls him my Father or Father. But here he calls him my God while he's hanging on the cross, dying. And he's not just saying this off the top of his head. So what is there for God's people to learn and live from Christ's teaching? on his cross. How to endure, this is the answer, how to endure the greatest training trials while trusting God, even though not completely understanding it all. You mean Christ didn't understand everything? He wasn't completely informed? We just saw how he knew what was going to happen to him. Yeah, we see what he knew of what was going to happen, but we'll also see there were things he was underinformed in. As an example, the night before, may this cup pass from me. That sounds like he is trying to get out of it. Well, it's not being completely informed about something. Got your curiosity here? Okay, good. So, it's about being able to go forward from here and overcome with God only, by the way, it can't work any other way, with God for his kingdom righteousness. So, let's arise from this familiar life, from humanity, and let God guide us away from temptation, deliver us from the evil one, and lead us where we are not completely informed about the path, but he's leading us, and we follow him. Pick up your cross and follow me, he said.